Fort Worth police officer was indicted and arrested on a charge of manslaughter for a deadly accident while on duty. Officer Christopher Balling is accused of recklessly causing the crash nearly 2 years ago that killed retired minister 77-year-old Billy Joe Addington, who went by Joe. Addington was killed close to the senior center where he lived on Azle Road in Fort Worth near Loop 820. Fox Sports' Brandon Todd is in Fort Worth with the lengthy investigation. Brandon?
Well, right, Steve, that grand jury indictment handed down this morning. Anyone involved in this case will tell you this was certainly a tragic accident. But what is being disputed by the officer's attorney and the police union is whether this was criminal.
I believe the grand jury got it right. I think he should be held accountable.
Randy Addington tells me by phone that his father's death could have been avoided if the Fort Worth police officer who hit the retired minister's Toyota Camry back in August of 2012, pictured here soon after the crash, would not have been driving nearly twice the speed limit.
And had he not been traveling at that high rate of speed, my dad wouldn't have been hit, and he'd probably be alive today.
The crash happened just before 11 p.m. in the 1500 block of Azle Road. 30-year-old officer Christopher Balling was coming over this hill, no lights or siren, at a speed of 86 miles per hour, according to those close to the investigation. He was on DWI patrol, responding to a call of a driver going the wrong way, nearly hitting motorists. Billy Joe Addington was turning across the road into the senior living center when the officer hit him. The 77-year-old died 2.5 months later from multiple traumatic injuries caused by the accident, according to the medical examiner's report.
My dad had multiple fractures of the pelvis.
Friday morning, Officer Balling was indicted for manslaughter. He turned himself in, was booked, and bonded out. The indictment cited excessive speed as the reason for the crash.
I think they got this wrong.
But Balling's attorney, Jim Lane, says 86 was not the impact speed. Rather, the officer hit the brakes and skidded to a speed of 47 when the cars hit.
And he used what speed he thought was necessary to find that car and get it stopped before it caused a collision and possibly killed a number of people.
Lane says the officer used discretion with his speed and did it because he thought there was a DWI suspect who was going to hurt someone. He also says 4 prior investigations into this crash found the officer was not at fault. The president of the Fort Worth Police Officers Association says they're standing by the officer, and they hope Chief Halstead does too.
If the chief terminates this officer, that will send a very strong message to the other officers that when they use discretion, they won't be supported.
Fort Worth Police Department today issued a statement saying that after the indictment, Balling was placed on restrictive duty. That means his gun and his badge were taken away from him. Early next week, Chief Halstead will review the case and then decide on punishment, Steve. That could include everything up to him being fired.
All right, Brandon, whenever something like this happens, the big question is, were lights and sirens running? We know they weren't, but do we know why he wasn't using them at the time?
Right, and that is one of the questions we asked the attorney today. He didn't want to get into that, but said it is their contention that with the other factors involved, such as where Addington was on the roadway, the speed, that hill, lights and sirens, they say, wouldn't have mattered at this point or wouldn't have prevented the crash. Steve?
That's the defense attorney saying that, so that's understandable. All right, talk about the delay. 2 years now the indictment finally comes. Why was that? Do we know?
Right, exactly. And I'm told there were a number of factors that went into that delay as well. The amount of time that Addington spent in the hospital before his death, the civil matter of the family settling with the city, and also scheduling issues with the parties involved. All of that, I'm told, caused that nearly 2-year delay.
Okay, Brandon Todd, live tonight. Thanks.